So before I start on topic, I want to tell you a story off topic that I heard recently. This woman had a heart attack and she went to the hospital, and on the operating table she had a near-death experience. And she said to God, is this the end for me? And am I going to die? And God said, no, you have another 43 years, 2 days and 5 hours. Thank God, she said. So they revived her. And while she was in the hospital recovering, she thought, I've got all of this time. So she had a facelift. She had some liposuction. She had a long time to live yet. She also called in her hairdresser and she got her hair all colored and changed. She felt pretty good about herself. And as she was leaving the hospital, she got hit by an ambulance and died. And she was so angry at God. She said, you told me I had 43 more years to live. What's up with this? Oh, God said, I didn't recognize you.
That is wonderful.
And so, I think we're going to tie that in a little bit about authenticity. Even God doesn't recognize you when you're not being authentic, right? So we're talking about being reachable and teachable. Our founder, Ernest Holmes, talked about our philosophy being open at the top, meaning that while we have our belief system that is so powerful and speaks so much to the truth, that doesn't mean that we should not be available for more information or to live our lives more richly and fully. So being open at the top means that while we study and practice science of the mind, it's important to be alert to and willing to learn more about the way the universe and God works. Ours is a wonderful philosophy, and we must also be willing to explore and embrace a deeper, richer understanding. This is a philosophy that teaches us how to think, not what to think. How to think, not what to think. George Santayana said, a wise mind has something yet to learn. As religious scientists, we walk a path of awakening, growth, and spiritual deepening through classes, workshops, seminars, and spiritual practices that allows us to embrace education as a lifelong endeavor. Divine nature is to be realized within us and to be revealed through our relationships, our decisions, and our contributions to the world. Years ago, Johns Hopkins University professor gathered a group of graduate students together, and the assignment was to go into the slums and to take 200 boys between the ages of 12 and 16, and investigate their backgrounds and in their environments, and then predict their chance for the future. The students, after consulting social statistics, talking to the boys, and compiling much data, concluded that 90% of the boys would spend some time in jail. So 25 years later, another group of graduate students was given the job to test this prediction, this early prediction. And they went back into the same area, and some of the boys, by then were. Men, of course, were still in that same area. A few of them had died. Some had moved away, but they got in touch with 180 of the original 200 boys. Only 4 of them had ever actually been to jail. So their prediction was really way off. And why was that? They started investigating. Why was it that these men who had lived in a breeding place of crime had such a surprisingly good record? The researchers were continually told, well, there was this one teacher. Well, there was this one teacher. And so they explored more carefully and found that 75% of those men said about that one teacher, the one teacher was the same teacher. One teacher had touched the lives of 200 boys. And she was still alive. She was in a nursing home. And so the researchers went to talk with her about what she had done, why it was that she had touched these 200 boys' lives so profoundly. And she was a little befuddled. She said, I don't know. I don't think I did anything different. She sort of stared off dreamily into space and mused almost to herself. I loved those boys. What she did differently was love those boys. She profoundly changed the lives of 200 young men simply by loving them. And so when we talk about being available, when we talk about being reachable and teachable, what we really are talking about is ways to be with people in a profound and different way. We're talking about being reachable and teachable, and this teacher, through her love, reached and touched those boys. It should become as easy for all of us as it seemed to have been for her. She seemed effortlessly able to touch and love 200 boys. It's easy for us to learn more and more of what we already know. It's easy to deepen our own perspective, to learn more about what we already have in our belief system. What's more difficult, what requires us to be reachable and teachable, requires us to be open to a variety of ideas that are different than ours, to practice a high level of empathy, and to sit with new concepts and folks who have different ideas from our own. To sit with new ideas, people that are different from us, with no judgment. It's easy for us to sit in our caves, cranking out the same old beliefs that we've been holding for years, never letting a new voice into the room, resistant to considering our point of view and considering other points of view. And when we come out of our cave, we might find that some of our values and our ideas have evolved since the last time we looked. To be reachable and teachable means to be in love with the beloved. To be in love with the beloved no matter what cloak or costume that expression of spirit wears. I want to share a story with you from Alan Cohen in his book, A Breath of Life. It's a daily reader. On February the 28th, he says, in a small town in Spain, a man named Jorge had a bitter argument one morning with his young son Paco. When he arrived home later in the day, he discovered that Paco's room was empty and he had run away. Jorge took some time to examine himself, and he remorsefully searched his soul and realized that his son was more important to him than anything else, more important than being right. He wanted to start over. Jorge went to a well-known restaurant and grocery store in the center of the town and posted a large sign that read, "Paco, come home. I love you. Meet me here tomorrow morning." And so in the morning, when Jorge went to meet with Paco, there were 16 boys named Paco. Alan Cohen says this: love is the most need of this world. While we have achieved all manner of material success, human beings on this planet daily cry out and die for love. If only we could love, how quickly our problems would dissipate. No matter how old, hardened, or sophisticated we are, there always lives within us, and there always lives within us a tender child that yearns to give and receive love. So how many Pacos are there in this world? How many Pacos do you know? One of the reasons that Ernest Holmes was so beloved was because he found folks fascinating. Everyone has a story, and to be reachable and teachable, it's our interest in the other person's story, to be interested in the other guy's story. You remember several weeks ago I talked to you about Steve Hartman's project of just throwing a
Dart.
Thank you, a dart onto a map, and then going to that place and sticking his finger in the telephone directory and going to people and learning their story, because everybody has a story. In the Science of Mind textbook, Ernest Holmes says, the whole purpose of the science of mind is to reconcile the apparent separation of the spiritual world, which must be perfect, with the material world, which appears imperfect. The spiritual world is the cause of the material world. We are spiritual beings governed by mental law. Only that world can appear to us, which we mentally perceive. So to be open, reachable, and teachable, we must be aware that our lives begin in our own mind, and that every person, every soul, every spirit that we encounter is an expression of the divine. And so we can go fearlessly into the world to meet people and learn their stories and learn how much we have in common with another. Ernest continues, man's experience is the logical outcome of his inner vision. His horizon is limited to the confines of his own consciousness. Whenever this consciousness takes a true perspective, its outward expression will lack harmony. Whenever this consciousness lacks a true perspective, its outward expression will lack harmony. So when we are discordant within ourselves, our outward world will be discordant. This is why we are taught, Ernest continues, this is why we are taught to transform by the renewing of our minds. Since no one lives by proxy, but each unto himself, every individual must make the test of his own soul. We must be reachable and teachable within ourselves. We must come out of the cave and be willing to engage with people and learn the rest of the story. Their story is your story. And when we know the rest of the story, we are all friends. We all have companionship. Everyone has a story, and their story is your story. Your story is my story. Robert Louis Stevenson said this: don't judge each day by the harvest you reap, but by the seeds that you sow. So when we talk about being reachable and teachable, we need to talk about coming out of our cave and interacting with people from that space of love. We can learn all sorts of intellectual information that affirms and verifies our belief system. But to be reachable and teachable, we must be willing to release the whole idea of intellectual concepts and move into our heart. That's a whole different knowledge set. Each one of us knows at least 200 folks that we can touch with our heart, that we can share our hearts with and our open ears to learn their story and to relate to their story, to learn the rest of the story, because that is what we really have come here to learn. That's what we've come here to experience each other and the other. All of the folks in this world who are not like me have a story to tell. But as I cycle around in my familiar neighborhood, as I cycle around in my familiar friendships, I miss so much of the richness of the universe. I miss so much of the amazing expression of spirit that the other has to share. And the closer that we can make those heart contacts, the closer that we can be open and available, reachable and teachable to others that have the appearance of being totally different than me. Then we are reachable and teachable. Then we are expressing our God truth. So I would like for you this week to take a look at where you are staying in your comfortable cave, where you are reluctant to step foot out of your cave. Where are you missing opportunities to be reachable and teachable? And my best guess is every day, maybe every hour, there will be opportunities for you to learn someone else's story and then identify how closely aligned you are with those so-called strangers. I already told you how much I appreciate you coming today. I appreciate your being willing to forge forward in the foul weather, to bring your essence and your spirit here. And as you share here in our cozy little place, being willing to take the essence of yourself out there in the world and interact and communicate with those folks that maybe are a little different than all of us here. Share your essence, and you will receive so much more in return. I bless you and love you. Namaste.
Namaste.
So I would invite Kate, the practitioner, to join me as we hold the consciousness. So I invite you to turn within. And as maybe you take some deep breaths and exhale, just feel yourself expanding into places and spaces that you've been unaware of expanding into before. In your mind's eye, travel through your tomorrow. Who might you encounter that has a story to share? And more important than that, who might you encounter who is so richly and deeply in need of your love? Who might you encounter that is crying out for a supportive ear, an open heart, and love without judgment, without criticism? Love without separation or division. Who might you encounter you can reach and teach, as well as being reachable and teachable yourself. I encourage you to come out of your intellectual cave. I encourage you to come out of your heart. Allow your heart to break wide open. I encourage you to be more willing to listen than to speak. To be affirming rather than judging. The world needs more open hearts. And who better to do it than you? In my heart, I hold all those that are unable to be with us today for whatever reason, being snowed in, perhaps some physical challenge, perhaps some other commitment, knowing that they are part of our community, and wrapping our arms of love around them, and being willing to wrap our arms of love around those that we have yet to meet. And so with great excitement, great anticipation, a great joy, I stand ready to be reachable and teachable. I stand ready to be open in love. And I know that it is all good. And from that place, I acknowledge that I am, you are, we are doing our share to create a world that works for everyone. And so I say, thank you, Mother, Father, God. Thank you, Divine Spirit. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And so it is.
So it is.